one of the key sectors of the front, the strike drone crews of the 412th Separate Regiment Nemesis of the Unmanned Systems Forces successfully struck a Russian tank. They also hit a towed howitzer and destroyed a truck transporting enemy personnel. In addition, the regiment's fighters detected and destroyed a Russian Morum surveillance system, which is used for reconnaissance and target detection at long distances. At the same time, in the Kupiansk direction, drone operators from the Burovy Brigade destroyed several enemy targets. Specifically, electronic warfare equipment, enemy personnel, and Russian ammunition were hit. The Russian army tried to use various camouflage methods, but all their efforts were in vain. In the Toretsk direction, Russian forces attempted to push back Ukrainian units near Toretsk, Yekaterinivka, Shcherbinka, and Yablanivka. On the Pokrovsk section of the front, the enemy launched assaults near Novoekonomig, Myrolobivka, Myrnorad, Zvariv, Udakny, and Novokrenka. And in the Novopavlivka direction, Ukrainian soldiers repelled attacks by the occupying army in the areas of Novopil, Podom, Boskorsenka, and Malinivka.
We are holding our positions there, not allowing them to advance further through certain villages. We're essentially creating separate sectors for destroying both reserves and, on the other hand, those troops that have entered specific settlements. In other words, it's a complex, difficult, and highly coordinated war. They focus on several directions, and the troops push through those areas specifically. The main forces and assets are strike groups, drones, rocket systems, and aircraft with guided bombs. And then, of course, there's the attempt to push further. But we've already gotten the hang of this tactic. We're working on counterstrikes against the enemy's firepower systems, which reduces their effectiveness.
Meanwhile, the border guards and drone operators from the Phoenix unit continue to inflict serious damage on the Russian army. Ukrainian FPV drones have destroyed a Russian tank, a truck, and some motor vehicles. In addition, a significant number of enemy personnel have been eliminated or wounded. And another unit of Ukrainian border guards destroyed Russian equipment in the northern Slobozhansk direction. Fighters from the Sumy detachment, together with defense forces, detected and destroyed an APC and a D-30 howitzer belonging to the Russian army. In addition, the border guards and drone operators located and eliminated a group of enemy infantry.
This causes not only physical, so to speak, consequences like death or injury. It's also a psychological fear now. I think that combining different tactics and military actions with unexpected strikes makes the enemy confused. They can't tell where the attacks are coming from, whether it's from the sky, the front, the rear, or the flanks. This is something that can be actively used by special forces to disorient the enemy's offensive potential, and even more so, to undermine their morale.
Another 1,010 Russian occupiers were eliminated by Ukraine's defense forces over the past day. In total, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the enemy's army has lost more than 1,059,000 soldiers, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Also, yesterday Ukrainian defenders destroyed one tank, 52 artillery systems, 3 multiple rocket launchers, 147 drones, as well as 138 vehicles belonging to the Russian invaders.
Let's discuss the situation at the front with Pavlo Lekichuk, head of the Military Program Center at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, good evening. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. Look how interesting this is. The Russian occupiers are once again spreading fakes about supposedly capturing certain settlements. But then the Ukrainian Defense Forces publish photos from those very same places, only now, of course, with the occupiers eliminated. Ah, straight to hell. That's exactly what you can say about the Russian occupiers. Why are these fakes made? And who are they for? And why are they in such a hurry? By the way, that's exactly how the Intelligence Directorate commented. They rushed to put out a video report.
Well, obviously, Putin needs some victories. The very latest rehashing of reports from Putin's generals to Putin himself ended up backfiring on him when he announced the capture of Chasiv Yar. He made this significant public statement, and now it's not just some anonymous general or a Russian terrorist, or even a cunning spy who meticulously prepared this analytical material for their authoritarian dictator who is truly responsible, but he himself, he is personally and demonstrably lying. And so why did Putin need to put so much emphasis on capturing Chasiv Yar? Well, what is Chasiv Yar anyway? It's a small town, a suburb of Bakhmut, which didn't have a large population even during peacetime. Now, unfortunately and tragically, thanks to the brutal Russian occupiers, the aggressive Russian invaders, it's just a desolate pile of ruins. What once used to be a truly beautiful, vibrant, and urbanized settlement has been completely turned into mere rubble and debris. The Russian occupiers, after months of storming it, what was the point of loudly saying, "Oh, we finally took Chasiv Yar"? Well, it's not Lviv, it's not Kiev, it's not Odessa, it's not Kharkiv, not even Zaporizhia. What did Putin need to show off? At least something. And obviously, by lying about the capture of Chasiv Yar, Putin wanted to show off the successes of the Russian army. But in reality, Putin himself is a whole lieutenant colonel, he knows. Chasiv Yar as a city by itself isn't important. If our defense forces are holding there, and it doesn't matter what percentage, 30 or 40%, but 60 or 70% of the city's ruins are occupied by the enemy, the main thing is that our defense forces are holding the line by the Chasiv Yar heights. After all, the significance of Chasiv Yar is in its name. Yar, meaning ravine, the Chasiv Yar heights form a reliable stronghold for our defenders to hold the line. That's what matters most, to hold the line and not let the Russian invaders advance any further. But what Putin needs is a propaganda image. So Putin is in a hurry, and his propagandists will rush as well. Skabieva, Solovyov, and the rest are rushing. Why are they in such a hurry? Well, I can't say for sure. Maybe it's to show off some supposed successes to the American president, who sent his envoy to Moscow. Maybe it's a demonstration for the Chinese, for Xi Jinping, a kind of indirect report. Everything is going according to plan, just like we agreed, don't worry. Maybe it's for some third party as well. Perhaps, though least likely, it's a kind of signal to the Russian population. Not Russian citizens, but specifically the population, because in Russia you can't really call them citizens. That the Tsar is right and everything is going just the way he wants it to.
I have a follow-up question for you. From international partners, from international leaders, we've been hearing more and more often that in 3 to 5 years, the Russian Federation will be ready to attack the northern NATO countries, meaning the Baltic states. Maybe they're talking about Poland, about missile strikes on Germany, and so on. But all of this, of course, is still just thoughts that people are sharing. For example, Mark Rutte shared his thoughts on this as well. And the NATO alliance, meaning an attack on the NATO alliance, on the northern countries, and so on. And Chasiv Yar with Pokrovsk, which the Russian occupiers, Pokrovsk, if I'm not mistaken, it was almost exactly a year ago, in August of last year, when the heavy attacks on Pokrovsk began. To this day, yes, to this day, Pokrovsk remains under the control of Ukraine's defense forces. Chasiv Yar? Well, there the fighting is a bit less intense, but the Russians still can't take it. The occupiers and the NATO alliance, but NATO has much more serious weaponry. The weapons that Ukraine is asking from the NATO alliance, which they share from time to time, include air defense systems and, well, other things, like the same drones, right? What kind of full-scale Russian attack on the NATO alliance are we even talking about? If they supposedly captured Chasiv Yar 3 or 4 times already, so to speak, but in reality, they haven't. Chasiv Yar versus the Baltic countries, the size.
Well, you brought up the Baltic countries for a reason. When we talk about the NATO alliance, the North Atlantic Alliance, we imagine a unified system, a single structure that acts as one mechanism. In reality, the North Atlantic Alliance, as it turns out, is a gathering of rather motley states. Take our southern neighbors, for example. The Turks, who have a very particular stance, or our remarkable neighbors, the Hungarians, with their Prime Minister Orbán. But that's not just a remarkable, it's a truly rare position, right? We could go on. Well, the United States of America. The leadership in the US has changed, and now there is no longer that clear-cut certainty in the interpretation of Article 5 of the North Atlantic Alliance, which has always been read as the readiness of all alliance countries to engage in collective defense if one member state is attacked. Now, many Americans, not just politicians, are saying, well, no, Article 5 doesn't actually spell that out so clearly. So everyone is supposed to do something, but what exactly to do, each decides for themselves. It's no coincidence that NATO, and not just European politicians, even before Trump came to the White House, would often start explaining and declaring the inviolability of NATO's Article 5, even before journalists asked them about it. That means this question was hanging in the air. And who was the one raising this question? It was Putin. Putin wants to test the alliance's resolve regarding Article 5. Essentially, he very successfully and clearly identified the key, the lock, the very bond that holds the North Atlantic Alliance together as a single unified system. If the principle of collective defense falls apart, the North Atlantic Alliance will crumble. That's why within NATO some say Putin might attack in 5 years. Those who are closer say Putin could attack tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Zapad 2025 exercises could turn into a provocation or even an invasion of our territory. We need to think about that. Other politicians or military officials tell us this, and frankly, the question is even more complicated. Is it really worth getting involved in this fight for someplace like Narva? It's too small a target for such an alliance. That's why provocations from Putin are entirely possible. The thing is, as long as Ukraine holds, it is unlikely that the Russian armed forces will be able to carry out two strategic offensive operations. But as soon as the armed forces of Ukraine stop resisting, the Russian occupiers will have their hands free, and Putin will have at his disposal a powerful army, trained and battle-hardened. And where will he send it? No one knows.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.